Welcome to Strange Planet. And tonight, I'm joined by one of the most fearless voices in late-night radio, Clyde Lewis, creator and host of Ground Zero, the #1 most listened to streaming talk show for 4 years running. He spent more than 3 decades exploring the shadowy frontier where science, secrecy, and the supernatural meet. He's appeared on Showtime, Sightings, Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura, and Discovery Channel, and has been featured in Rolling Stone magazine and Paranoia magazine. Clyde isn't just a broadcaster, he's a cultural archaeologist, unearthing the hidden links between government secrecy, spiritual warfare, and the architecture of power. And I'm not sure why our paths haven't crossed long before now, but regardless, here we are, and I'm thankful for that. And what I'm thinking is this is going to be maybe less of an interview and more of a truth summit. Clyde Lewis,
Fantastic.
Welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
Well, there are many a night where I've curled up with my teddy bear and listened to you on Coast to Coast AM. So, that's how I know you, for sure, because I listen to your wonderful work, your knowledge about music. It's amazing what you can do.
Thank you. It's high praise indeed coming from you, and I'm, as I say, I'm so glad that we finally have met, and I hope this is the first of many conversations. Sure. What first lit that spark for you? Was there a moment, one experience that set you on this path?
There are many experiences that set me on the path. When I was a kid, I grew up with the influence of a barbershop. And what I mean by that is my father used to take us to get our hair cut. And we get our little flat tops when we were kids because Dad wanted it that way. He wanted us to have flat tops. And that's kind of old hat because we looked like nerds walking around. But we had a guy named Blackie Blackburn. And he was the barber. There was this Mexican dude that was his co-barber. And what would happen is all the men would get together in the barbershop and they start talking about conspiracy theories. And they talk about the latest thing. And they raised on Kennedy assassination conspiracy theories, Bircher stuff, the idea of the New World Order. All these things were talked about when I was a kid. And I just thought they were outrageous and crazy. But gosh, there was something to it that just had my interest. And then when I got to be like in my teens, I ended up accidentally working with a guy. His name was Wolfgang Gossett. And Wolfgang did a show that was one of the first paranormal shows out there, even before Art Bell. He was an Antioch priest, and he would do all these stories, these crazy stories. And they called him the Exorcist of Utah. He was this, they called him Ghostbuster #1 or Ghost Hunter #1. And I worked with him, and it was amazing because he was just like this bizarre wizard-like guy. And then come to find out, I had, many years later, come to find out that there was a lawyer out of Alaska that was investigating, of all people, Wolfgang Gossett. And the reason why they were investigating him is because he claimed that he was D.B. Cooper.
Wow.
And so what is interesting is there was actually a comic book. It's called Brujeria, and they feature me in the comic book as the leader of this group of men in black. It's really hilarious. And one of the guys in the audience said, "Well, who trained you to be a man in black, Clyde?" And I said, D.B. Cooper himself. I said. Now they had no clue that I had any connection to D.B. Cooper, but they said in the comic book that I was trained by D.B. Cooper as that asset for the men in black. So it was kind of nice, people have their. In fact, I just noticed I was in another book too. I can't remember the name of the book, but somebody sent me a segment where they're saying a group of guys are talking about the Nephilim. And the guy goes, "Man, I can't believe I'm talking about this." He says, "Yeah, I guess listening to Clyde Lewis at night paid off." So, I mean, it's like, when you wind up in the pop culture like that, it's very flattering.
Yeah, those are terrific bona fides. I think actually we were both featured in a brand new comic book that came out several years ago. It was I have it sitting on a bookshelf somewhere called Conspiracy something or other. Just our pictures.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
I'll have to dig that out and find that for you. But when my boys were young, I took them to the comic book store, and we found it there. And when your dad's in a comic book, you're good with your sons. That's good for about 20 years.
Yeah, you made it really. I think the best depiction of me in a comic book. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I am also the voice of the Toxic Avenger, which is Toxic Avenger 4. And they just did Toxic Avenger, the new version. But one of the things about being the voice of the Toxic Avengers, I wound up in a comic book called Wolf and Bird. They are, I guess, lawyers that defend paranormal entities. And what happened was the Toxic Avenger was on trial in one of their court hearings, and they were saying if there's anybody that the Toxic Avenger is saved and not harmed, the Toxic Avenger will not go to jail. And there's this one sequence where an old man comes walking into the courtroom, and the whole room is glowing in the dark. And they're saying, well, who are you? And he says, my name is Clyde Lewis. I had cancer. The Toxic Avenger saved me. And I about cried because it was funny because I did have cancer. I don't know if the Toxic Avenger saved me, but still, it's really kind of nice that when you have fans out there that draw comic books that put you in them, and they just have a touching, way of saying hello. I just find that to be remarkable. It's like you said, you tell your kids you're in a comic book, you've made it. Really, you really have, I think.
Yes. The Toxic Avenger, Kaufman, was that the gentleman that ran that studio that produced out of New York, right?
Billy Kaufman, yes. Out of New York.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Hell's Kitchen.
That's right. And how are you these days? How you feeling?
Oh, my these days? How am I feeling? I'm doing okay. I'm going through, I go through little health things every once in a while, but, I've been, I guess, probably more healthy than most after having 3 bouts of cancer, and I also had some embolism problems. But otherwise, gosh, I can't believe that I'm still here. Like I said, I mean, health is always one of those things that you sometimes take for granted. I don't usually, but it's like I'm trying every day to be healthier and healthier, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It's one of those things. But I'm very grateful that with all the things I've been through, I'm still able to. It's 30 years be able to do Ground Zero and to be able to create shows that are different from the rest of them. I mean, I'd like to be proud enough to say that my shows, when I do them, they're unique and original. Sometimes I think, there's duplication going on because of a lot of the talk shows that are in the same field. But I tend to think that a lot of the times I'm pretty original with what I talk about, and it's because of my upbringing. I mean, when you're living with it for as long as you did, and when your father was pumping it into you, it's like I always tell people, I say, this is me trying to prove my father was lying to me, but he wasn't lying to me. He was telling me the truth. And so I find that kind of like it's a Valentine to my father. In fact, naming myself Clyde Lewis was a Valentine to my father because my real name is Lewis Clyde Holder. I revealed it. But his name was Clyde Lewis Holder, and so I named myself Clyde Lewis after him because it's kind of like it's kind of like a Valentine to my dad who gave me all this information. And it is as quirky as it was, it's gotten me to where I am today. And he'd always kid around with me about, I remember we'd go out together and he'd introduce me to his friends. He kind of reluctantly introduced me because he said, he didn't approve of a lot of the things I talked about on the radio. And so he'd always say, this is my son, the Prince of Darkness. And I kind of felt like, okay, Dad, I get it, But I'm really not that much of a Prince of Darkness. I do sometimes delve into some dark topics, but I tend to do it for information, not that I'm a practicing witch or anything like that. I just have a fascination with an objective viewpoint on the paranormal and the parapolitical, and that's where I put myself.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you've built an entire career exploring, let's say, what lies beneath UFOs, deep state psyops. What happens when the microphone goes off, though? I mean, what keeps you up at night? What mystery just won't let go?
What mystery won't let go? Wow, that's a hard one because I get into these rabbit holes. I don't know if you've ever gotten into a rabbit hole online where I'm up at night and I have this thing where I have this ability because I actually am a mutation. I think it's kind of funny to say that, but I have a genetic thing that happened to me because my mother was exposed to radioactivity. This is like a Spider-Man story, I guess. But my mother was downwinder, and so I have picked up a number of things that most people don't have, some abilities that most people don't have. I call it my Clydey sense rather than a Spidey sense. But I just have this uncanny knack for doing deep research. And so some things that, always keep me, interested are, like ghost stories. I'm really, really fascinated by the quantum aspects of things now, because if it weren't for Heisenberg and if it weren't for Schrodinger, I don't think we'd have the paranormal. If it weren't for Charles Fort, we wouldn't have the paranormal. And I think that I have that interest in hopefully, and I do take indulgences with quantum physics when I speak about it, because I'm not a quantum physicist. It's just that I thought the thing that makes me a quantum physicist is basically I met Brian Greene and I met Hawking, and that's as close as it gets. Otherwise, I'm just some high school kid that, does a radio show and just is lucky enough to have a good voice. But yeah, I have fun with that, because it's just, I believe that quantum physics is going to be the key to miracles, because every time we're wondering, how did that happen? How did that happen? Well, it's superposition, or it's M theory, or it's
particle entanglement. Yeah,
it's particle entanglement, and it's a good thing to throw out there. I'm sure a lot of particle physicists and a lot of string theorists just hate me, but I know, I think I know my heart's in the right place, because I've known a few of them and talked with them a lot, and I've got people that I know that I've talked with that they know what I do and they know what I am doing, and I'm trying to strike up conversations about these things that most people will not talk about, that affect us whether we know it or not. And quantum physics is affecting us, just like AI, just like transhumanism, just like all these things that are part of the future. It's future shock unless you have somebody there to guide you through it.
A lot of the things that you talk about, a lot of the things that I've been talking about, not quite 30 years, but about 25 years, used to get us laughed out of the newsroom.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are 3 decades later, and things like the deep state has become just part of the common nomenclature. It's everyone, mainstream media now is throwing that term around. Do you ever feel like the world's finally catching up to what you've been saying all along?
Yeah, it makes me work harder. That's the problem, is that, it's like people say, well, why don't you talk about this? Well, I've talked about it. I've talked about it. And I have a friend who says, you can't say that to people because they want to know your slant on it. And I'm going, okay. And I give in, and I go back. And then that's what I call my, I don't know if you know this, Richard, but here's the thing about conspiracy theory. It's cooler during the Cold War than it is today. You ever thought about that? I mean, we're Cold War kids. We got the last half of it. Think about it. Cold War conspiracy theory from JFK on was the coolest time to be into conspiracy theory. That's when my dad was talking about it. Now we got people who create conspiracy theories for clickbait. And so you're stuck because people say, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. He believes in flat earth or whatever. No, I don't. No, my conspiracy theory and my background and my stuff goes into history. It's about historical conspiracy theory and how it's wound up becoming part of what we're living in now. And you're right. It's like for 30 years I've been talking about this, and it's been crazy Uncle Clyde talking about it at night. Now it's, what does Clyde have to say? And people get annoyed when I take the night off. They say, what are you doing, man? Well, you got to hear what's going on for today. And I'm like going, wow, I didn't realize that people depend on me that much to talk about it. In fact, I've got to find a way to, keep me AI'd for the rest of my life. Otherwise, they're going to be so angry when I go away. But I enjoy doing it. And so I'll do this until I drop over. But in the meantime, it's just I have a knowledge of this, and I just want to, and then I get into a lot of deep things, and I do a lot of research and study. So everything that I do is well researched, and I don't hate the idea of people calling me a conspiracy theorist, but I really am not in love with it, because a lot of what I talk about is well researched and found out, and it's stuff that is not known. That's what makes it a kind of conspiracy theory-esque, because people will say, well, that's just conspiracy theory. No, if you look it up, or if you do research on it, you'll find, no, it's not a conspiracy. It's just one of those things that people just don't talk about. It's not main parlance in the day. It's not something that water cooler talk. You don't go into water cooler talk and say, did you know that a woman turned into a monster at a cottage somewhere in Minnesota? They don't talk about that. But it's there, and it's been reported, and there have been people before you and I that have done harder work and have put in the time, and it's always like, I remember when I was first starting out, I started out at the same time as Art Bell, and people would say, you're just trying to be like Art Bell. And I go, no, I'm just trying to be me. And now people say, oh, we think that you're better than Art Bell, or you're Art Bell or whatever. And I'm like going, I'm so flattered. Thank you. But before it was like, no, I want to be something else. I want to be different. I want to be unique. It's like, it'd be like, you're a lot like Jimmy Kimmel, or you're a lot like Colbert, or if they just talk to each other and said, yeah, okay, we're a lot like, but we all offer something, and that's the whole point of this exercise, I think, is that we got to keep the story going. And I worry that there are a lot of people out there that, while they're, they go to the UFO conventions and they do all this stuff like that, where are the people that are going to be the new guard? I mean, we're getting older. And I'm just wondering who the new guard are going to be. I'm wondering who's going to be stepping forward and taking these positions that you and I have taken and deliver the information that needs to be delivered. Because if we don't keep telling the story, and if we ignore it, it's going to go away because AI is taking it away. Anything you talk about that the AI doesn't approve of, they'll say it's pseudoscience or conspiracy theory. There's no room for speculation. There's no room for theorizing. There's no room for imagination. We're going to become so plain and homogenized, we're not going to have this anymore. And it's all fun. This is fun as well as informative, and it's entertaining, and it's interesting. It just makes my life interesting. It makes me interested in the world.
Speaking of AI and algorithms, and I mean, have you been deplatformed on social media? Have they come after you in that regard?
I've had the disadvantage of having, throughout my career, not just recently, but throughout my career, of having people coming in that when I'm down and out, they come to me and they want to help me. And when they help me, it's like, some of them are good people, like the people I'm working with now that got us Ground Zero Plus, and we're doing Ground Zero Plus. It's a remarkable website. They're good people. There were people before them that weren't good. But there was a time when it was right after 9/11, the 9/11 attacks. I ran into some really bad problems. First of all, my name, the people that were syndicating me at the time didn't like the name. They said, take the name away because it belongs to 9/11 attacks. I go, no, I won't do that, because I came up with a name in 95. And about 2 weeks after I came up with the name was when the Oklahoma City bombing happened.
Uh-huh.
And they called it Ground Zero at the time. And so they came to me and they said, we need to change the name. I said, no, I'm not changing the name. I mean, there was a time where I was thinking about calling it Cult Radio. Didn't do it. But, there was a bunch of them. Like there was, I can't remember. There was like something like Omni-esque, like something from Omni Magazine or something. They would call it Continuum. Why would I call it Continuum? What a stupid name. But I was calling it Cult Radio Continuum. And then I said, no, I'm sticking with Ground Zero. Same thing happened after 9/11. They said, change your name. I said, no. And then they said, well, you either change your name or we're pulling the show. And I said, well, what can I do to keep the show? And they said, well, if you can come up with $40,000, this is what they told me. Wow. If you can come up with $40,000, we'll keep the show on the air, because we don't want, it's going to cost us that at least for satellite time. And we're giving me this nonsense. So this guy steps in and he says, I will take care of this. He says, I'm a big fan of Ground Zero. I have the money and I'm going to do this. The guy turned out to be a CIA operative. And so we were basically working with some guy in the CIA that was into psi. He was into psionics. And it was scary because he started getting very demanding. And then he got to a point where he wanted to have the show. He wanted to be on the show and get rid of me. That was the whole thing. The idea was come in, work with Clyde, get rid of Clyde, and then take over the show. And that was the plan. And I caught on to that, and I just like, wow. So, yeah, there have been times where it's not just deplatforming. I have been shadow banned on Facebook, and I'm still shadow banned on Facebook, really. I mean, most of the time, if you look at my numbers on Facebook, they're very high, but the response is very low. And I think it's because they bury what it is that I post on Facebook. We're avoiding that now because we're getting people who are doing AI posts for us that are really cool. But yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that I have a hard time getting out there because of the fact that, well, first of all, I have a cult following, which is awesome. I have, I'm well known, but I'm also people who listen to me, I'm their guilty pleasure, because it's like they go to me and they're listening to me that way. And that's what keeps me at number one when you do the surveys. They're saying, well, out of all the streams that are streaming, they do about 20 million, 30 million surveyed posts. They say out of all those, we get Ground Zero is coming up on top most of the time. And that's really cool because, that goes ahead of many people that are getting a lot of the publicity. I mean, I guess I don't need publicity because everybody knows, that I'm doing it, but I tend to feel like I have a cult following. I tend to feel like, and I like that. I like the idea that I'm the guy that, everybody kind of goes, do you listen to Clyde? I do. Okay. So,
well, you definitely don't want to be considered mainstream. That would be a career killer.
It would be. And I have a lot of people that I've run into, celebrities, that I've talked with, that I ran into saying that they listen to my show. I one time was at a bar with who's the guy? Oh, well, he doesn't drink though. It was Brian Green, the Indian from what was that? Dances with Wolves.
Oh, he
And
just passed away. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he just passed away. He didn't. He wasn't a drinker. He was there with another actor, the guy that was in Field of Dreams, the redheaded dude, and he was also in Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah, and 30-something, I know.
The guy, yeah, at 30-something, yeah. And he was talking to me, and he says, we're working on a project, and he says, we listen to Ground Zero all the time.
Cool.
I got a phone call from, oh my God, the lead singer of oh my God, what band was it? Well, Stained, Chris Lewis called me once, see how I was doing. I'm like, wow, that's cool. And then, the guys from Slipknot, they were listening to the program one night and called. We were doing a show about future of music and AI music. And who's the guy the guy that did Blinded Me with Science? The guy that's saying Blinded Me with Science.
Yeah, I know. I know who you mean. I know. Yeah,
I drew a blank on his name.
Me too.
I was thinking Tommy Two-Tone, but it's not Tommy Two-Tone. It's somebody else. And
I haven't trouble with anything recorded after 1975. You'll have to forgive me.
Oh, do you? Okay. Well, the song "Blinded Me with Science." The guy that did that was listening to the show, and Thomas Dolby. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Dolby calls the show, and he says, "I wanted to give you my opinion on this." I'm going, Thomas Dolby? Are you the Thomas Dolby? He goes, yeah, now I'm a music professor somewhere in Philadelphia. And I'm going, okay, cool. Yeah, sure. So, there are people out there that listen, and there are people out there that, I'm very surprised that listen. I'm very surprised I get recognized in public too. There's a great story that I always tell people that happened to me. I was at Disneyland with my second wife. I got married. I've been married a few times, and I was with my second wife and the kids. We went to Disneyland, and we were stuck on the It's a Small World ride. So I had never been on the ride, and I was on the ride with my family, and we were sitting there watching It's a Small World, the kids all singing, and they're singing different languages and everything, and the car was just stalled there in the Small World ride. And I'm like thinking to myself, well, this is weird. And my wife leans over to me. She says, I think the rides broke down. I said, oh, so we're going to sit here and listen to the song ad infinitum until we go absolutely crazy. And she says, I guess so. All of a sudden, the lights go down, little pin lights go on. And it says, ladies and gentlemen, the It's a Small World ride is malfunctioned. We need you to exit off this area, go this way. So we did. And so I said to my wife, I says, I think I'll get the kids a frozen banana. And so I'll go wait in line over here, and you go take care of what you need to go take care of. And she says, okay. So I'm standing there, and all of a sudden I hear, Clyde Lewis. And I look over, some guy I worked with in Utah. He goes, wow, Clyde, so good to see you. It's a small world, isn't it? I go, oh, yeah, it is. It's a small world, all right. It was just one of those things. I just died when he said that, dude. It was like, oh, it's God.
He was waiting. He was waiting all day. He was waiting for weeks to use that line. Wait till I get on an amusement. All right. I want to talk to you about, this is something that you discuss on the program. This is a new term for a lot of people, I think, parapolitics. Weaponization, the weaponization of the paranormal. And do you think, I know you do, but I want you to explain how intelligence agencies, maybe when they cross the line from studying the paranormal to actually weaponizing it, turning belief itself into a tool of control.
Well, they do that with major religions, first of all. A lot of religious fanaticism. Creating a form of sectarianism in the political world is something that I really abhor. This is why we're in the situation we're in now. We've turned politics into what would be equivalent to either a religious type of attitude or like a football game attitude, and we don't take it seriously. We just take the idea of the convenience of being able to gripe about it and fight about it and divide ourselves over it, and that's what I find. Also, the weaponization process. Another weaponization process is with propaganda. They're able to play on the hearts and minds of people and their religious beliefs and the mythologies that we've been raised with. And a lot of people don't know this. And if they if they ever read Carl Jung, or if they've ever read, Joseph Campbell, a lot of the times the mythologies that we've been raised with, or the ideas we've been raised with, they do echo inside of us. They are in the unconscious mind, and they're able to go in and they're able to exploit that. And so people tend to see what they want to see because they don't think outwardly about the metaphors they're being attacked with. They think inwardly about the metaphors, because the brain doesn't, the brain cannot differentiate between what is real and what is not real. And that's what's weird, is that people say, oh, yes, it can. I know what's real and what isn't real. No, what's going on is that the tactile version of you does know what's real. You can grab something and say, I'm holding this and it's real to me, or I'm doing this. But the mind itself, when it's getting messages and images, they go back into the unconscious mind, and they stand there. It's just images. They don't have a definition to them. So they come back to you, and they can use certain types, like, for example, predictive programming, or using the revelation of the method, or going back and enacting something in a movie that was a familiar thing that happened before. They do that with music. They do that with, you've heard of the devil's chord. They do all those things, and they know what to do because they've psychologically figured it out. And so they use your own mind and your own fears and your own paranormal superstitious beliefs against you. I mean, and they say, well, how can you prove that? Well, I can prove that. They use numbers to influence you. 9/11, for example. 9/11 is a magic number. You say 9/11, and immediately things will stop, and they'll go, people will stop, and it hits them. And then the conversation will all go towards what happened in New York. Okay. You say, or 666. Okay. You say 666, people, oh, the beast, the mark of the beast, the devil, and it's because we've associated ourselves with symbols and numbers and sigils. In fact, the very words we use are strung together, and that's what they call spells. Spelling words are itself magical, because when you look at the Greco-Roman takeover of Egypt and how they took over the symbols and signs and then remade them into the numbers and symbols we use today to read with, they were magical symbols. They were magical sigils. They can take any symbol they want and turn it into whatever. That's why, when the Nazis came in and they took the swastika, which was a symbol of unity and the north, south, east, and west, they turned it into a symbol of tyranny. That'll remain a symbol of tyranny forever because of what they did to it. And so governments can go in and they can embolden imagery. They can embolden certain words. They can use certain words as magic words that trigger people. It's called neurolinguistic programming. It's been done before. You hear a word and immediately it stops you in your tracks. I call them the magic words. I mean, I was going back and reading about how when 9/11 happened, one of the things they did was, see, look at me, I'm doing it. When 9/11 happened, one of the things they did is they used the word ground zero. They used the term unthinkable. They used all the terms necessary to make it sound like a nuclear attack. And we were all being bombarded with the idea that this was an attack, a nuclear attack. And what people don't realize is that all the images they showed us over and over again in 9/11 were ingraining in us the idea of this disaster in a city. A lot of people don't know this, but the movie Independence Day, after 9/11, it went from being 300 on the rental charts to 75 on the rental charts. And the reason why was because people couldn't get enough of watching New York being destroyed. They had that going through their head all the time. And so the parapolitical aspects of this is that people were going out and renting Independence Day so they could get that drug going through them again, that feeling of anger, that feeling of peril. And this is something that, again, and a lot of people don't know this. I talk about it because I think it's fascinating that people were that caught up in 9/11 and the attacks and everything that something like a movie like Independence Day, which where you're seeing buildings being destroyed by aliens, White House, everything. People wanted to watch that because they were so hooked on the idea of watching the buildings tumble. So it's just bizarre what they're able to do with just very little. And with the internet now and algorithms and everything else, you can imagine why people do what they do and why they used to, things they used to loathe, they now accept as something that's normal.
But do you think governments, I mean, I believe in an unseen world. Do you think governments are actually harnessing psychic or occult forces?
Well, go back to the MK Ultra program. Go back to MK Often. Go back to MK Naomi. All these programs were being done to enhance brain capacity with things like LSD and psilocybin and all these things because they knew the power of the mind. Then you have Montauk, and you have the idea that they were doing things like, getting young kids to remote view certain bases, during the Cold War. And then, of course, you've got the First Earth Battalion, which was a group of guys. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Men Who Stare at Goats.
Mm-hmm.
They were a real group of guys who were there to, again, remote view. So, look, if they tell you that the paranormal doesn't exist, if government tells you the paranormal doesn't exist, go look at the budgets they had for psychic warfare, especially during the times of the Cold War. Psychic warfare was, and they're still doing it today, obviously. And they know what to do to trigger sleeper agents. They know what to do to get someone to do their dirty work. And these people don't even know what happened. They're completely oblivious to it because they're under some sort of spell that they're able to do, whether it be hypnosis or under a drug-induced sort of thing, or maybe even being exposed to certain types of music, certain types of tones, certain songs trigger them. You see what Charles Manson said about the Beatles albums. Mm-hmm. These are things that are very real, and they're very, the human mind is something that they want to explore. It's like once they finish with the Human Genome Project, they want to look at the fingerprint of the brain, and they want to know why you react the way you do. They want to know why people, I just did a show about Jeffrey Epstein and how he wanted to find out if there was a DNA strand for beauty, or whether or not he could create a master race, or whether or not there's a DNA strand for intelligence. And so, this type of stuff, eugenics and a lot of this, what we'd call alchemy or magic, continues to this day. And a lot of it's sinister, and a lot of it is carried out, and they think of it as just part of the plan. Other people would see this as being satanic or Luciferian in nature, and they don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of crazy beliefs are being, I always tell people, it's not what I believe and it's not what you believe. It's what they believe. That's what we're dancing to. It's what they believe, and that's what they want you to do. And that's why it's harder to keep some cohesion socially in this country, because so many people want to beguile you into thinking like them. And that's pretty much what I mean by parapolitics and the idea of ponerism, and whether or not, evil can be a political tool. And we can say that it's a political tool, and it's been a political tool ever since, man crawled out of the slime. It's just one of those things that seems to be a part of political power and authoritarianism. There's got to be some sort of dark synarch in the background that's dictating to these people what's going on.
Right. It feels like we're in the middle of a modern day exorcism. You've got these powers of darkness, and now, they wear the face of bureaucracy, right? The banality of evil and so forth. You and I have never met. We've never talked before. Do you believe in an unseen world? Do you believe in, let's say, an angelic or a demonic realm?
I would say that, there's something that was told to me by a guy that I know, that former member of the Church of Satan. And he told me something that really made me feel uncomfortable, and I'm going to share it with you. He said that, what if I were to tell you that there is no secret, dark synarch in the background telling people to do these things, and that people are doing them because they're evil incarnate, that they just feel morally obligated to be mean and cruel and horrible? And he says, that's what a monster is, Clyde. He says, a monster is a person who's decided to stop pretending. And it was a very, very dark look at humans, that what if we're all doing this and there is no head? There is no reason for, we're all believing in God, we're all believing in a devil, but what if there isn't? What if the reason why people are the way they are to people is because they're downright cruel and ugly, and it's something that's in them? But there's groups of people that aren't that way, and then there are groups of people that are that way, and they use power as a cudgel, and they create their demons, and they create these names, and they create everything they worship, and it's all a part of, turning inward with all of the evil and the hate and the disgust, and it just makes you some dark figure. And I thought that was terrifying.
It is, Jim.
Because I think, as a Satanist, I'm sure he was telling me I deny that Satan exists, but I think he was trying to tell me that, suppose, the devil doesn't exist. I'm thinking, oh, I get it. Yeah, the biggest trick the devil ever pulled was telling somebody he didn't exist. And yeah, I think the devil does exist. I think that, and not some devil that's wearing, red pajamas and horns. I think that there are individuals that are incarnately evil, or they're incarnately, that they move as like a predator would move, meaning that it's either you or me, it's either them or them or you or whomever. And it's always say, when you're dealing with bad guys, people always say, well, who are the bad guys, Clyde? And I said, well, the bad guys are the ones shooting at you. The ones that are shooting at you are the bad guys. The ones that are trying to destroy your life are the bad guys. The ones that are using spiritual warfare against you are the bad guys. The guys that are trying to silence you are the bad guys. Every time I hear people talk about censorship, I always say to people, go back in history, and I'm going to tell you something. The good guys were never the ones that told you to shut your mouth.
That's right.
The good guys were never the ones to tell you to stop using art as a way to get a message out. The good guys did not censor people.
That's
so
so
you
true.
have a person tell you to shut up, or you're not going to be able to talk like this or whatever, and they want to step all over your First Amendment rights or whatever you want to talk about. They're the bad guys, and they've always been the bad guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
they're the bad guys.
You mentioned Project Stargate and MK Ultra, and now we have AI mind mapping. Do you look at these as more or less like evolutions of the same ancient quest to dominate human consciousness?
I do. I think it gets more advanced. I mean, science now, believe it or not, they have groups now that are looking into things like panpsychism, which I find interesting, because that's the idea that everything has an energy. Everything puts off an energy source. And before that, some like New Age, poppycock. But in the meantime, there are scientists that are now looking into it. Now, why is beyond me. Maybe it's because they're thinking that if they can harness the energies of certain things, they can use them for computer programming. There's always this theory that, what they're doing, and it's like Geordie Rose said about the D-Wave computers and what they said about these advanced computers, is that we're going to have the power to summon demons and bring them in through the wormhole. And I always think, God, it's like, we're going to bring demons through a wormhole, we're going to bring God from a wormhole, and if they're just these frequencies of light or whatever, where are we going to put them? Well, we're going to put them in these transhuman androids, or these transhuman bodies that they want to create. And you keep talking about designer babies, and they were just talking about in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, designer babies, or they're now using, the Chinese say they have grapeseed extracts now they can use to keep mice alive longer, and they think they can prolong life for 150 years. And they were just talking about that. Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Kim, they were on a hot mic saying, hey, if we can like harvest organs and we use whatever, we can get people to live 150 years. Well, no, not people, it's them. They want to live 150 years because they always want to rule us. They want to be able to keep their evil empire going, and they don't answer to anybody because they don't have any morals. They don't want to die. They're like vampires. I would say that the modern day vampire exists more so than anything else. I'd say, because you hear about like Peter Thiel and others. Oh, I get injections of young people's blood, and then you hear the rumors about adrenochrome, and you hear rumors about this. It's like modern vampirism, and the vampires are hiding in the shadows. They're even hiding in the churches, and there's no way to identify them unless someone says, "Watch this person, figure out what they're really saying, read between the lines." You ask yourself, if I decide to follow this person, it's like, why would anybody follow Bill Gates? And they do. And even during the pandemic, I was like shaking my head, going, "Why does anybody listen to this man? Why does anybody listen to Fauci? These guys are evil." Yeah. I mean, how is it that a guy who was responsible for the HIV problem in this country become a hero overnight for COVID-19? Or how does a guy that we know goes into places like Malawi and forces kids at gunpoint to get vaccines? That's Bill Gates. And now here's Bill Gates saying, well, I just don't think that, I don't think that climate change is that big of a doomsday problem, and so I'm backing off.
Yeah.
And I think, well, yeah, we've always thought that climate change is a joke, but here's the thing. He's backing up because he knows that with the AI power that we're needing to generate all this AI he wants to play with, we can't make net zero. There's no way in hell. So they're basically saying, well, screw it. We don't need net zero. We want AI power. We want that power rather than that. And it's like, bottom line is yes, they want to abuse the planet. They've done so forever. That's why they have war. That's why they have bloodshed. It's because these guys are nothing more than parasites on us that want to live our lives and live happily. And that's the bottom line. That's what it is by parapolitical. It's evil exploited within the political realms.
You talked about ritual symbolism and predictive programming. It feels like we're living in this, I don't know, magical theater. You mentioned you were down in Disneyland, the Magic Kingdom. It's designed. Yeah. It's like designed to cast these collective spells rather on society. How do we break free from that?
You can't. That's the thing about planet Earth. I realized something when I was in Roswell, and I was speaking in Roswell, and I had said something just off the cuff, and I had the whole audience. They laughed for a good long time, and I said, one of the things we learn about Roswell is that any advanced civilization that comes here on a flying saucer, there's one thing they didn't count on about Earth, and that is one of the biggest things you find on Earth is incompetence. And for some reason, we all are subjected to incompetence. We're all subjected to evil. We're all subjected to all of this. And so it's not that we have to break free. It's what we have to do is we see it as a reality and we adapt to it. And we try to adapt to it by being the best we can be, trying to avoid these things, because no one is immune from falling for whatever it is that's out there. I mean, somebody who's very clever can fool you into doing anything. In fact, they were talking, if you read biblical passages, they say even in the future, the elect will be fooled by what's coming. And, I'm a firm believer that, like Jean Baudrillard once said, he says, the most cynical thing mankind to do would be to fake the second coming. And while everybody's talking about Project Bluebeam, which is not a real thing, it's just a theory, I talk about Project Bluebeam in a more cynical way, and that is, why bother faking an alien attack? Why don't you fake a return of Jesus?
Right.
That would just fix it right there. All you need to do is just a hologram of some guy coming down out of the sky with explosions and a few good special effects, and maybe the 1812 overture playing in the background, and there you have it. There's the second coming, and there was and they would believe it, because it would be wrong to criticize it. You could criticize an alien invasion and say this is fake, but if something came down that convinced you that the Messiah was here, that's what makes us right. That's what Peter Thiel was talking about when he was talking about the Antichrist. It's so easy now to fake our own Antichrist with the tools of the beast. That'll be, as Jean Baudrillard said, the most cynical thing mankind can do, because we are so caught up in symbols. We're so caught up in words that we don't take the time to wonder if it's real or not, because the brain doesn't know the difference. And in fact, when subjected to real or artificial, the brain prefers artificial. It just does, because they don't know the difference. Look, if I was to have sat you down in Jurassic Park, let's say Jurassic Park opened up in theaters, and I said, Richard, we're going to go see Jurassic Park together. We're going to sit down. I said, do you realize what's going on here? They actually clone dinosaurs, and this is what we're watching. Oh, come on, Clyde. This is it's just a computer. Oh, okay, yeah, I get it. It's a computer. But when you're dreaming about those dinosaurs, are they made in computers, or are they part of your life? It's like, what was it? 17 million people saw the alien autopsy on Fox.
Yeah.
We ran it 3 or 4 times. And, even though we were told that was a fake dummy, in your subconscious mind, you watched the autopsy and the literal butchering of something that looked like a human on national TV, uncensored. You wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have an autopsy on TV with a real person. But no, they gave you the opportunity to see what looked like, what I would say, a Masonic ritual carving of an alien on television, and no one blinked. They watched it, and it, like back when 9/11 happened, I want to go watch Independence Day so I can still get that feel back. And that's the thing, is that feedback loop is there, and they exploit those very deep, dark subjects that are part of our unconscious mind, metaphors and images like kings and queens and rulers and dragons and all these things that we think are fantasy. But I mean, that's why Star Wars is so important to people too, is because they went in and they played with every bit of symbolism they could that touched the hearts of people, both Eastern and Western. And they knew exactly what they were doing when they did it. And that's why people can relate to it.
And what is the end game? I mean, the government's obsession with the phenomena, UFOs, extraterrestrials, is it about extraterrestrials or is it about controlling the spiritual narrative?
About controlling the spiritual narrative. It's exactly what it's about. And the reason why I know that is because we don't call them UFOs anymore. We call them UAP. I don't call them UAP. I hate saying that. UAP is so hard to say when you're on the air. Well, we're looking at a UAP tonight, guys. Yeah, no, UFO. I'm just used to UFO. But see, that's the thing, is they tried to take over the narrative. They wouldn't take on the UFO topic if they didn't change it themselves. It's like chemtrails. You look up chemtrails. Oh, those are hoaxes. You're an idiot. Don't talk about chemtrails. But if you call them stratospheric aerial injections, then the government goes, oh, you're talking about what we do when we lay down those clouds behind the planes because we want to jack up the lithium in the air. Yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about. And see, or, wait, we're trying to dim the sun. All that stuff is real, but it just depends on what words you use. If you use chemtrail, oh, you're a chemtrail person. Okay, I'm not going to need it. But if they change the narrative, and they're doing that constantly, if they change the narrative, change the words, then you find yourself, well, no, I'm not a believer in chemtrails. But right. I know the government's trying to dim the sun. Well, what are those? Well, they're not chemtrails. Otherwise, I'd be an idiot. I'm not an idiot. I talk like the government talks because I think I'm going to be a part of them. They're going to let me in on all the secrets and everything's going to be great. No, you're not. It's like Carlin said, they're a big club and you're not invited. And that's how I feel too. It's like you have to fight against this nonsense. And sometimes you have to dig up some of the most foolish things you can to say, look, use them as metaphors, use them as examples of how we think and how we feel and what history has shown. I mean, history rhymes. It's been rhyming a lot lately. And I don't know if people understand that. Mark Twain said that history rhymes. And so, yeah, I agree, it does. We started seeing parallels, like going, wasn't this like what happened, in Nixon's day? But some people don't even think that far back. It's like, you're going to say, well, who was the worst president of the United States? Barack Obama. That crap. Barack Obama. Biden, Barack Obama. How about Woodrow Wilson? Do we say that he was a bad president? Oh, yeah, we can say that. Or Nixon. Yeah, he was a bad. Nobody will say Nixon, but it's like Barack Obama and all that crap. Barack Obama. I go crazy because I'm thinking, did everybody just kind of have this time deletion after or before Barack Obama? I mean,
right.
That's the whole thing about 9/11. Again, we're back to 9/11. The magic word is it's back to the idea that what happened is the kids today don't know what it was like to live prior to 9/11. So they watch TV shows like Stranger Things and they say, were you guys able to go outside at 10 o'clock at night and ride around on your bicycles? Yeah, we were. But there was always that thing on TV that said, parents, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? But we were outside at 10 o'clock at night riding around on our bicycles, getting into trouble. And that would be unheard of today. Wouldn't happen.
No.
I mean, and if you're out there past 10 o'clock, you're raising hell and doing bad things. And so, yes, we used to have gun club in high school. We had guns in the back of our truck. We'd take them to school.
Mm-hmm.
Why has everything changed? I mean, things just all of a sudden just went and everything closed. And there's a world that was forgotten. And we're the only ones that can talk about it. And yet, that's what makes us old. That's what makes us those guys that stand on lawns. Get off my lawn, you kids. Is that we remember a freedom and a taste of America that no child or no young person is ever going to experience because of parapolitical activity.
Interesting. Well, is there actual evidence that certain intelligence groups or a specific intelligence operation was deliberately staging paranormal events like a haunting or a UFO a wave or some sort of cult phenomena?
Tavistock Institute, you heard of them?
Yeah, oh yes.
They were a human engineering group. They would engineer certain things happening. I'm sure there have been many times where they faked certain things. I mean, false flag attacks are probably the biggest example of faking something to get people. I mean, what was it? Is it the Tet Offensive?
Yeah.
Just fire a few shots and immediately we're at war.
Or the Gulf of Tonkin. The Gulf of Tonkin incident.
The Gulf of Tonkin, that's what it was. Not that. It was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. So, I mean, people always like to talk about the Northwoods document, but it was also the report from Iron Mountain. If you read that, you're just completely like blown away going, oh, they do have plans to, create something to keep the military in power. Because if we lose the military, we lose everything. I mean, that's why there won't be peace in the world, because they need the military. They need to put military people in the streets. I mean, back in 1995, I said, back when Bill Cooper was still around, and just these, I've had other people on the show, and they say, in the future, there will be troops in the streets of the United States, whether they be UN troops or our own troops, but they're going to be there, and they're going to create a civil war stance and a police state stance. And I'm thinking, that's impossible. How can we? And then look around. I lived in South America during the Dirty War. The end of the Dirty War, I lived there. And I am going to tell you now, Richard, it is the same. When I lived in South America, what's going on here is the same as what happened there at the end of their Dirty War. People disappearing, people being rounded up, people being disappeared, troops in the streets, people getting shot and killed for just, stealing tangerines. I mean, this is, and you live through it. I don't think people understand civil war. I think they're thinking that, well, if we have a civil war, everybody's not going to go to work, and they're not going to, no. You go through your day every day. You look at what happened in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Do you think they went to work every day when they had the bombs going off? Of course they did. Israel goes to work every day. Something can blow up in a bomb can blow up in a mall, and they have the bodies cleaned up and everything pretty much taken care of before the lunch break. In the United States, though, we're not used to that. We're always used to the idea, well, if something happens, we close down things. Well, during a real civil war, you don't close down things. People go to work every day. People do things. But then you start hearing about how judges get shot and killed outside their homes, or bombs go off at a synagogue, or, things go, people get rounded up and taken away. You never see them again, or they're put into what are called black box type of interviews and shutdowns where they don't have access to a lawyer, where their rights are being violated. This is when you realize that this is where you need to say, this is not America anymore. This is something that is out of a 1984 George Orwell type of nightmare, even worse than a George Orwell nightmare. So, I don't know if Americans can see it. I lived through it, and this is exactly the way it was when they said there was a civil war in Argentina. There were questions about whether or not elections were fair. There were questions on whether or not the police were capable of keeping the people in line, and whether or not they needed more troops in the streets. People coming at 3 a.m, knock on the door saying, okay, are you a citizen in good standing? No, I'm not. Okay, we're going to take you, drug you, and throw you to the sharks. I mean, that's the way it was there. And I lived through it. I lived 2 blocks away from the Pink House, which is the equivalent of the White House. And then they have an obelisk like the Washington Monument that's over in Nueve de Julio. I lived right there, and I'd say that was ground zero, if you want to call it that, with the Madres de Padre de Mayo. They were there, and they were standing there because their sons and their daughters were missing, and they were taken at night by something that would be the equivalent to ICE. They would pick them up and take them away because they didn't have their papers. And here we are back to that again, and we're doing it here, and I'm just reliving it again. It's something that it's hard to explain, but I am.
Just getting back to parapolitics and the unseen world here for a moment. What would be the end game of weaponizing the unseen? Is it political power, or is it something darker? Are they feeding on the chaos that they're creating?
I would say the end game is convincing people that the leaders you have are divine and godlike. Because if they can perform miracles, if they can do these things, and it's like indistinguishable from magic, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle when someone comes forward and convinces you that they're able to call down from heaven fire, or they're able to, with just a snap of a finger, blow up France, or are able to heal the sick in front of you with a special pill or something? That's the whole point, is that when they get to a point, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, I was in Rolling Stone magazine, because I made a declaration that I thought that Prince William was the Antichrist. That's why I wound up in Rolling Stone. right
That
up
was
next
the
to
one.
David Icke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. And they interviewed me and talked about it. And I told them why. I said, because when you have a group of individuals who say that their divine bloodline goes all the way back to Joseph of Arimathea or go back to Jesus Christ, that's something you need to pay attention to. Because that's why they rule over you. That's why, people like the Pope, for example, send pieces of the cross to King Charles to wear in his crown. He did that. Now why? Why are we handing, what are believed to be these oracles of God and handing them to a king? Because this king believes he has divine right. Why is it that the king and the Pope prayed together and now there's a throne waiting for him there in the Vatican? It is because they are declaring themselves divine, bloodline and all, and you're going to go, well, I guess I should worship them. You have the choice still. Like, I mean, people still do. People wonder why are the kings and queens? They're not relevant anymore. They're relevant because people still believe that they have divine right and divine bloodlines. Take away the bloodline, take away the idea that they may be connected to Jesus or Joseph of Arimathea or Peter or Paul or whomever. They're nobodies. Give up that charade and they're nobodies. And that's why I say that they're antichrist, is because if they're saying that they move about the earth as the divine replacements of Jesus, and in fact, many of them believe in the Merovingian cult ideas that Jesus really didn't die, that he
Right.
gave birth to the queens, that his descendants are all in Europe because he moved to Gaul and had got married to Mary and some woman named Margaret, and they had children.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe he died on the cross. And the whole idea of Jesus is the idea of the atonement and the blood sacrifice. Take that away, you don't have Christianity.
Precisely.
So what is that? That is anti-Christian. And that's why, they say that they're head of these churches, but they're no more divine than you or I. But they'll convince you of that. And if they have the magic to do it, like with the illusion of AI, the deep fakes, whatever, if they have the ability to, again, convince you that Jurassic Park is real, then they're going to win. Because humans will prefer the fake over the real. That's why kids play video games. Are they going to go out and they're going to enjoy what's outside in the reality? No, they're going to play themselves sick in the metaverse because they prefer that stimulation over the real stimulation. I'm sure many kids that play video games have never taken the opportunity to take a lawn chair and sit in the woods for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. They would be astounded at the power they feel when they're in the woods.
And the graphics are better out there.
Yeah, the graphics are better because they're real. But see, you would prefer symbols and signs over the reality. And I think people like Jean Baudrillard and others are very... and in fact, Baudrillard's ideas were what made the Matrix and how the Matrix exists and how, it's an illusion. It's a simulation. It's like you're in a Squid Game. Squid Games are real, but they're also simulations. You can die in the Squid Game, but you also realize that it's a construct. So that's the confusion here. It's that they tell you that it's a construct, but yet everything around you is real and you're feeling everything real. But, eventually they're going to bring someone forward that's going to convince everybody of the simulation by doing all kinds of magical tricks and all kinds of, different types of things that are going to convince you that this person is unique and sent from the stars or sent from heaven or even sent from hell. It doesn't matter.
So governments, the elites, the powerful, they're not just studying the supernatural. Are they summoning it?
Yes, I think they are. There's a lot of... I think about the civic religion and the ritual that's involved with there, pledging allegiance to the flag, all the rituals that they do. Those are civic religion issues and rituals. But I'm sure behind the scenes they have other rituals that they perform. And we know about, sex parties, and we know about sex magic, and we know about what the elite do. This is very real, and it's done. And that's why now everybody's concerned about the Epstein files. They're concerned about, the pedophilia in high places. But come on, we knew going all the way back to the Bush administration. We go all the way back to Bohemian Grove. We go, all these things that happen where these guys do this without accountability because they feel they're untouchable. And what do? They do a ritual called cremation of care. That means that what they do is they symbolize their care as throwing it on the fire as if, yeah, I can go out and I can murder, 100 and some odd people in Gaza tomorrow and not care. That's how they are.
This is what I always say when people who have a problem wrapping their heads around the idea that governments would be willing to kill their own citizens. I mean, people murder other people for a $10,000 life insurance. For $10,000.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about billions of dollars here, whether we're talking about drug cartels, hundreds of billions of dollars, or trafficking. Of course, they would eliminate anybody who got in their way.
Well, I mean, you look at, like, let's go back to Nazi Germany, and I was just, how did people fall for that? How did they? My God, looking back at history, that was so bad. It's easy. It's easy. I mean, look, think of yourself. You're a 14-year-old kid. All right, you're working on a farm. You're dirt poor. You're making no money, and so all of a sudden these guys show up at your doorstep, and they're wearing these cool uniforms, and they're like all dressed to the gills, and they say, how would you like to be a part of something greater? How would you like to come and be with us and wear these cool, Hugo Boss uniforms and be cool with us? Tell me as a 14-year-old boy on a poor farm you wouldn't go. You damn right.
Yeah. We all want an epic mission. We all want an epic mission.
That's right. That's right. And so, everybody thinks they're a part of some epic mission that's going to go nowhere. You're no different than what the Nazis were. You're no different than what the trusting Russians did with Stalin. We have gods among us that use their powers, their parapolitical powers, and they're things that, we always point out how the Nazis use magic. Well, but, buck up, guys. The CIA uses magic. The NSA uses magic. They all use magic. They're alchemists, and they are able to, they do all kinds of things behind the scenes that you don't even know about, and they're darker than you can even imagine.
Clyde, take a few minutes and tell us everything we need to know about Ground Zero, where to listen, how to listen, Ground Zero Plus, the website.
Well, Ground Zero is on radio stations across the country. I haven't gotten a list of them, but I know I'm out there because people call me all the time. I have full phones on my show. We burn up the phones every night. We go from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. That's Pacific time. And, we talk about all the things that we've been talking about. And the cool thing is that we also have Ground Zero Plus. And what that is it's a website where we not only have my stuff, but we have people who do podcasts, and we have a whole network. It's like listening to a 24-hour network of paranormal and inspiration and things of that nature that we have available. That's free. But if you want my shows without commercial interruption, if you want to get involved, we have documents, we've got social media, we've got all kinds of things where you can get along with people who are part of the Ground Zero team and friends, and they can chat with me. I'm always available to chat with. You do that, it's only $9.99 a month. And we have another tier for just the shows, which is $6.99 a month, and then people like to pay sometimes $89.99 for the year, and they do that because it's cheaper. But you're getting just nonstop interviews, and I mean, we bring in people for chats that, like, for example, we once did a chat with Gerald Casale of Devo. He came in and hung out with us for a while in the chat, and I love Devo, and I love Gerald, and Mark. But yeah, I mean, you get these people sometimes that want to come in and be a part. We had an exclusive seminar with Avi Loeb when Three Eye Atlas first started, and he came in and he did a lecture. He also did a lecture about his adventures in the Pacific, finding this UFO, and it was amazing. So, I mean, you get some pretty damn good exclusive stuff on Ground Zero Plus. It's a meeting place where people who like this stuff can meet and enjoy and take part and do research, and it's a lot of fun. GroundZeroPlus.com.
GroundZeroPlus.com. All the links will be in the episode description. Well, Clyde, it only took us a quarter century, but better late than never. It's a delayed meeting you.
Right.
We can do this again.
It's so weird, it went by so fast. Just goes to show you that we can talk up a good storm and just let the time fly.
Indeed. Well, until next time, thank you so much for this.
Such an honor, man. I listen to you all the time. I love you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clyde Lewis.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.